What's up guys? Today I'm going to be working on swapping out the chain and sprocket on a 2009 Suzuki DR650. So last weekend I went and did an event with the Washington area trail riders called the Shenandoah 500. It's about 500 kilometers of on and off-road riding. Figured I'd do one more ride with this existing chain and sprocket, which I've had on for the last 5,000 miles since I bought the bike from the previous owner. It's got a little bit of a sticky link situation, a couple of links, not a sneaky link, but a sticky link. So I figured I'd go ahead and do one more super dirty, muddy ride before I go ahead and swap it out for this new clean DID gold chain with X rings. So hopefully that one will last me for the long haul. So let's get to it. So you may be wondering, how do you know if you need to change your chain? I think this is an O-ring chain, but I'm not actually sure. You can look right here and see that obviously the outside is dirty, but for O-ring and X-ring chains, they're internally lubricated. So the dirt on the outside really doesn't make a difference. What does, however, make a difference is if you see here, when I'm turning the wheel or the rear tire, you see that? This one right here, this is a sticking link. It's really not flexing the way that you want it to flex. It's kind of bent up. And as you continue turning this chain, you'll see more and more sticking links that just don't lay flat, or they're not flowing with the sprocket. These are fine, but then you get to some that are bound up. And those sticking links obviously are creating friction. They create obviously a little bit more rough ride, and I just don't know the history of the chain. I know this bike, before I got it, went on the Trans-America Trail, it went on the Colorado and Idaho BDR, so it's put in some time, some mileage. You can see over here under the swing arm, there's another sticky link, so it's just not flowing correctly, and I know I'm losing some efficiency, and also I just don't want to have this big chain give up the ghost and snap out on me. So I'm gonna go ahead and swap it out. In addition, you can also look here, you see the sprocket. It's not too bad, but it's got a little bit of shark tooth and no hooking on it yet, but I want to follow best practices and go ahead and change out the front and rear sprocket at the same time as the chain. So I'm going to go ahead and replace it just as it was before. I really like this gear ratio, so I'm going to do a 42 to 525 with chain, or excuse me, sprocket on the back, and I'm gonna put a 14 tooth 525 sprocket on the front. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's talk about removing this chain. This is a factory chain. I think it's the OEM chain, and because of that, it doesn't have any type of clip-on master links. In fact, I can't even really identify what the master link is in my limited knowledge. So I do have a couple of tools that I'm going to use for this. So let's go over the tools. Okay, so for this project, we're going to need some key tools. The first tool that we're going to use to remove the chain is going to be a Dremel tool, and I'm going to be using a cutoff wheel. That's just going to be so we can get through to the point where we flatten out one of these rivets to the point where it's flush with the actual chain plate. I could use the chain breaker tool to just force it and push through on that, but I don't want to do that. I like my tools to last a long time. I buy cheap Harbor Freight tools as far as stuff like the chain breaker, which is just a every once in a while type of tool. So I am going to go ahead and use a Dremel cutoff wheel to flatten out and flush up that rivet in one of the links with the plate. And then after that, I will use our chain breaker tool combined with a socket wrench to pop that rivet pin out, or that chain pin out. And then we're gonna go ahead and install a new chain. Okay, so my bike fortunately has both a side stand and a center stand. If your bike doesn't have a center stand, part of this process is going to be removing the rear wheel by pulling the axle. So you're going to need to have some type of a dirt bike stand or other type of motorcycle stand to lift this up. But since I only need to lift up the rear wheel, I'm gonna put it up on the center stand before going ahead and cutting the chain, because soon after I'll be pulling out the rear axle and pulling off the rear wheel so we can swap out this sprocket set. I've gone ahead and installed the cutoff wheel on our little Dremel tool, got it plugged in. But before I even go into that, I want to go ahead and cover a super important step. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to make sure that you're wearing the proper glasses. And no, these are not the proper glasses. This is a Father's Day gift, but you want to have some sort of impact resistant safety goggles. Obviously, I would like to actually have more coverage than this, but I'm just going to use these impact resistant impact resistant glasses to protect my eyes. I really don't want to get any little fragments of metal flung into my eyes from these Dremel tools, because when you see the sparks fly off, those sparks are little fragments of molten metal basically. So I don't want that anywhere near my eyes. It looks cool, but I wouldn't look cool having to wear an eye patch. So I'm going to swap out my glasses and put on some safety glasses at bare minimum. If you got more coverage, even better. So I'm going to choose this link right here under the swing arm, because I want to make sure that there's enough free area around to insert the chain breaker tool, which I'm going to need to press the pin out. So I could have done one on top of the swing arm, but then I would have to rotate the chain around. So I'm just saving myself a step. So we're going to cut the head off of this pin right here. All right, so let's get started. All right, so as you guys might have noticed, you see that I went around the area of the pin. That's just a way for me to know that I'm flush with the surrounding area. So I grounded down an area larger than the pin just to make sure. I'm gonna get this little area down here. All right, so now we're getting to probably the most complicated part of the job, which is the chain breaker and chain riveting tool. So I've never used one of these, and I got this kit secondhand. Thanks, Dad. And I just really didn't know what to do, so I had to use some deductive reasoning to figure it out. But the part we're gonna need, most of the kits are usually pretty typical. So we're gonna need this chain press part here. We're gonna need one of these pins, and you're gonna wanna match up the pin size to the diameter of the pins on your chain, or as close as you can get to that. And then there's a spring here. I don't really know what the spring is for, so we're just gonna skip that. And then we're gonna need a press plate. So the press plate is where? Let's see. Okay, so we're gonna use this press plate so that it has an area for the pins to push through. All right, so you want to select the pin pushes, or the push pins, for whatever size pin your chain is spec'd for. Most of the kits you're going to have will have different size press pins. The one that was the close as I could find to my size was a 3.8 millimeter rivet. It looks like it goes right in the middle there. So we're going to take that. Then on the actual chain press, you have this little thing that looks like a C-clamp, and it has two parts. So you're gonna go ahead and push this part, or take this part out. Just screws out, or unscrews. Okay, I'm guessing that the spring goes onto this part of the pin. So we're just gonna take the spring, put that onto this part of the pin. Fits pretty snug. Okay, all right, and then this part of the pin drops down into this hollow area there, and then we're going to take this and press that in. So I'm not positive about this, but I think that this needs to be right below the edge. So if you see that that's flush right there, I think it needs to be right about there. Okay, and then we're going to unscrew this. so that there's enough of a gap that we can get the backing plate set up with the push area, or the pin push through part. Okay, I made a mistake. We actually don't need this push through part for the part that we're about to do. There's already a hole right here in the clamp that the pin can push through. So we're just going to put the pin basically central, and there's a little divot where it kind of holds on to the other rivet on the other side of the chain. And I'm assuming we'll just go ahead and snug this up against it like so. Okay, so we have it snugged up to the point where it's sticking onto that rivet. And then for this one, we need a 14 millimeter socket for a snug fit there for the pin pusher, and a socket wrench. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and put this on and get it going the right direction, and just start to slowly work to push that pin through the rivet. And I feel it moving. It's getting easier. Oh, there you go. You heard that? All right, so we're gonna keep pushing. The pin, or the rivet, has pushed through to the other side. So we're just gonna reverse this and actually turn this whole assembly here to loosen it. And now you see, there we go, perfect. So the pin just dropped through, and that's it. So now we have a loose chain. At this point, we'll go ahead and pull the chain off of the sprockets and out of the bike. And now we're ready to go ahead and install the new chain. Now that we have the chain out of the bike, I can show you the main reason why I wanted to switch it. Is as you look at the chain, you can see there are a number of links that obviously gravity is not strong enough to straighten out. The chain is just kind of bound up, and that puts extra stress on your drivetrain. All right guys, so now that we have the old chain removed, we're also going to need to go ahead and remove the old sprockets, the front and rear sprocket. We're replacing it with the same 525 width drivetrain set, so we don't need to worry about any type of spacers or anything like that. But let's go ahead and cover the parts that we're going to be replacing it with before we go ahead and proceed with removal of the old sprockets. Let's go. All right, so the new gear that I'm going to be installing are a DID 525 ZVMX gold X-ring chain. It's a super long name, but they had it in their clearance deal section, and I blew up that deal on the DR650 forum, let everybody know they had this chain going for $89 with free shipping with a promo code, and normal price is over 200 bucks. So it's usually considered a heavy duty chain for big like Harley baggers and stuff like that. I don't care. It only weighs like a quarter pound more than the standard O-ring chain, and I figure why not? It's way cheaper and stronger. I also went ahead and got a set of JT sprockets front and rear. For the rear, we're doing a 42 tooth 525 width sprocket, and the front we're going with a 14 tooth 525 width sprocket. The previous owner of this bike had a 14 tooth on the front and 42 on the back. I really like it. It does great off-road. I don't do a whole lot of highway riding, so it's perfect for me for the type of real true dual sport usage that I do with the bike. All right, so let's go ahead and proceed with removing the front and rear original sprocket. All right, so to remove the front sprocket, we're gonna have to start off by removing the front sprocket cover. It's got 3 little bolts holding it in. These are 8 millimeter bolts. One is here, here, and here. For this, I'm going to use an 8mm socket, an extension just because these are kind of inset a little bit, and a socket wrench. So let's go ahead and pull those out. And I have them torqued to spec, so it's really a pretty easy thing to remove these. Which reminds me, I'm going to need to run downstairs and get my torque wrench before we reinstall these parts. But you don't need a torque wrench for removal. Alright, so that's loose. Okay, that's one. Pretty much free spinning at that point. That one's out. And I don't know if these are different lengths or anything like that. We'll find out in a second. It's been a while since I've taken these off. But when you pull these out, you want to make sure that you keep them in the order that they came out in terms of spacing. Sometimes these bikes have different lengths but maybe the same thread pitch. So you just want to make sure that whatever hole they come out of, you're putting it back into. Alright, seems like that one's loose. Okay, cover's off. And then just to make sure that things go back easily, I usually just put the bolt back into the same hole while I'm storing it between that part of the job. All right, so now you can see the front 14-tooth sprocket that we're going to be replacing. I don't have any major hooking or anything like that, or shark toothing. There's still, you know, pretty square edges on the side of some of these. I could theoretically keep it, but the gaps in the channels is probably pretty wide because that chain was kind of worn out, so it just looks crusty too. I'm just going to take this out, clean up that area, and go ahead and install a new one. All right, so to remove the front sprocket, we're gonna need a 10mm socket for these 3 bolts here. If you have it in neutral like I do when I was removing the chain, you'll notice that, oh man, this is spinning. How am I gonna remove this? Easy. Put it into gear. All right, and once it's in first gear, this no longer spins. So let's go ahead and get that 10mm socket on and begin removing. That's one. And I don't know if this substance inside of the hole is thread locker. I hope it's thread locker, or if it's corrosion from this thing being doused so many times underwater. But yeah, either way, it's fine. We're gonna thread lock the new one when we put it in. We'll use some blue thread locker just in case. I tend to use blue thread locker on any kind of moving parts just because I don't want these to, under any circumstance, back out. And these really don't have a high torque rating. You know, they're barely held in there, so the thread locker is helpful. All right, so as you can see, I began to spin. All you're gonna need to do is rotate this little retaining plate here until the openings align with the little output sprocket or output shaft. You can pull that off. Okay, and now your sprocket is loose. Go ahead and pull that off too. Now make a note that the little lip or the bevel is on the side facing the engine case, so, or the output shaft. So you want to make sure that that bevel is facing inside when you put the new one back on. All right, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this area while I have the sprocket off. No use putting it back in dirty. I'm not gonna film that though, so I'll be back in a minute when we talk about putting on the new one. Okay, let's go. To remove the rear sprocket, you're gonna need a 6mm Allen key. I like to use these, which are basically socket-based Allen keys. It gives you a little bit more leverage. That goes right in there. I probably should have pulled this off or pre-loosened these before I removed the drive chain so that I could you know, cinch it down and make it easier to get some leverage. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it off of the center stand and put it back onto the side stand so that the rear wheel will contact the ground and give me some holding power so I can go ahead and pre-loosen these. It's just gonna be a lot easier than trying to hold the wheel in place when it's on the ground to pull this off. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that the wheel's back on the ground, you can see this is locked into place. We should be able to go ahead and get these rear socket bolts loosened up. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, that's not budging. That's not budging at all. So these are actually, these must be studs. All right, so after reviewing the service manual, it turns out that it's supposedly a lot easier to remove the nuts from the back of this sprocket if you remove the wheel first. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the factory toolkit and pull the axle. All right, so I've gone ahead and removed the rear wheel and separated the sprocket holder from the cush hub assembly. Now I'm gonna use, might have to PB blaster this thing, but this is a 12mm socket. And I'm going to make an attempt to separate the rear sprocket. So the most challenging part of this project so far was figuring out how to get this rear sprocket off of the rear sprocket holder, and I couldn't get enough leverage with it on the bike. There wasn't enough clearance. It's just kind of a difficult setup in general. So what I ended up figuring out was I could use a 12mm socket and socket wrench and just put it onto the part here. The studs were pretty firmly pressed or stuck inside. So I just took my foot, and I'm not saying you guys should do this, or you know, it depends on what you want to do, but I took my foot and put it onto the cush hub other part assembly, just kind of cinched it so that it'll hold the wrench in place and not let it pivot. And then to loosen it, I just went ahead and I didn't have my rubber hammer mallet here, but I'm just using like a rubber coated weight and just stood on it with both feet like that, stood up and just kind of whacked it like that. So each one was loose enough so that the nut would rotate. So now you can see the nut rotates in the hole and it's moving on the other side. That loosened it enough so that I could then switch off and just use the 12mm wrench on this side and use the Allen key adapter on this side together and get enough leverage to start to, as you can see, loosen these. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of them off camera and then we'll proceed with the job. All right, so we have the old sprocket like now fully loosened. All the bolts are out. I just keep them all together with the little washers. You can see here, this was the original 42-525 spec sprocket, and then here's a new JT sprocket, same tooth count, same width, and you can see side by side. I mean, looking at it, yeah, now looking at it, looks like the old ones were kind of pointed, you know, you got some shark toothing going on here. So I am glad that I'm actually changing these out, and it just looks, you know, additional bling. And this is going to be mostly in commuter mode for the next few months. If I go out and do any dirt, it'll be on the 350 KTM. So let's just go ahead and get this swapped out. All right, so the factory service manual or climber's manual says this needs to be at 20 pound-feet or foot-pounds of torque, or 27 Newton meters. So I already have my torque wrench set up for that. Let's go ahead and separate the old sprocket from the new, and we're gonna go ahead and put the new sprocket on after cleaning this hub assembly up a little bit. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back. All right, so I didn't do too much cleaning here, you know, just something basic, but I'm gonna go ahead. It's a dirt bike after all, you know, it's gonna get dirty. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this new sprocket, ooh, shiny, back on. And as I mentioned before, we're gonna be tightening this down to a torque spec of 27 Newton meters or 20 freedom unit pound-feet. So we'll drop this one in this side, put the little washer on the back side with the nut. All right, so I got the nut on the back side. Just gonna go ahead and hand tighten this to its snug. I'll do that for all 6 of the nuts and bolts for the sprocket carrier and sprocket. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down to 20 pound-feet of torque. It's kind of hard to film this because I have this little tiny tripod. So I'll go ahead and do that, and once we're ready to put it back onto the cush hub assembly and remount the wheel, I'll start the video up again. All right, so I've gone ahead and remounted the new sprockets on the back and torqued them down. I realized that I misplaced my blue Loctite, so I'm gonna have to make a run to the hardware store, but I'm just gonna go ahead and show you how to reconnect the chain, and then I will Loctite and torque down the front and put everything back together after the video is over. But this is the important part related to this job. So as you can see, I've already draped the new gold chain bling bling over the rear sprocket, threaded it across, and then I popped the new sprocket on, went ahead and pushed it all the way back, just started threading on the chain, and then put it into gear so that the sprocket will not let the chains fall back off. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and let a little bit more of the chain out so that we can reconnect both links, and then after that is connected, I'll go get this blue Loctite so I can finish the proper installation of the front sprocket, and then I'll adjust the chain, and that's pretty much it. The connecting link comes in a bag with the chain, comes with some additional O-rings. Let's go ahead and get that opened up. Packet of O-rings. So what we're gonna do is open up the packet of O-rings and the grease. And what we want to do is we're gonna take the link. All right. We're gonna put the O-rings onto the link, or the X-rings. Onto one side. So you have one X-ring or O-ring on each of the pins. Oops, lost an O-ring. Alright, so now that we've greased that link and that side of the X-rings, we're going to go ahead and insert that side through one of the open sides of the chain. Okay? Alright. Then we will put a little bit more grease onto this X-ring. All right, we'll put that on this side of the pin. Okay, and now we'll pull the connecting side of the chain together, and we might have to bump that axle up again. Hands are very slippery right now, so it's pretty hard to do this. All right, and you're gonna pull that side of the chain until we can get the two pieces together. So let's see what we can do about this. Hope I purchased the right length of chain. There we go. Oh, it's stuck. All right. Oh, okay. I didn't have it going through the chain guard at the bottom. Alright. That's where the slack comes from. Alright, so now we got it going through there. Pull a little bit, boom, there we go. Alright, so it's through. Now we're going to move the other X-ring. And sorry for the wind, guys. It's super windy up here right now. Alright. And we're going to lube the other X-ring and pop that onto the other side. Now we take our link and we pop it over. So it's not going to pop over immediately. This is where we're going to need our chain tool to close this. So let me pause the video and then I'll get to that part. Alright, so the next part of this process is you're going to first need to press the pin all the way through for both sides. So the way that you do this is with the chain press tool. I've taken out the two pieces that I need. So first part, this part with the holes that goes over, that allows for the pins to slide through, goes on this side. So you put that right here. And then the other side, which is just a backing plate that sits on the side of the established rivets, it's got a little channel here, that goes on the top. Alright, and then we're going to put this over the back side so that it catches on those back rivets. And we're going to snug this up. Okay, get this lined up so that the pins will have a space to go through. Alright, kind of line it up by hand and eyeball it so that you make sure that it's right over both of the pins. Okay, and then I got this 14mm socket again. Alright. Now we're just going to start cinching this down. So I'm going to put the bike back into drive. Alright, so I remembered a tip about this. It said to put it onto the sprocket so that this will be stable and not flex around a bunch. So let's go ahead and try this again. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put the backing plate over the rear rivet pins and then snug this one in the front up like that, so that it lines up over these pins. I've already got it a little bit pressed in, but I'm going to have a quick look through to see if this tool is aligned with the pin. So it looks like, you can't really see it there, but yep, you see it's almost there. So I'm going to just adjust a little bit. growing at this point. Good enough. All right, so now we'll go ahead and tighten it down. Okay, and I'm looking in the side. It looks like the pins are all the way through. Okay, so once the pins are through, we're gonna go ahead and remove this and go to the next step. All right. So the pins are through here now, and now what we need to do is flatten these pins by pressing them on. So the way that we do that is using the anvil attachment. Now your kit's going to come with a few different anvil attachment styles depending on the type of pin you have. Mine look like this. So I don't know if you can see that. There you go. There's the anvil attachment. And what the anvil attachment will do is we're going to go ahead and put this backing, this little hole here on the back little rivet area. And then you put the anvil portion into this area here in the holder. Yeah, into this area here in the holder, and then that should be able to press it on. So let's give it a shot. All right, so I was previously mistaken about the anvil attachment. The way this works is you actually put the backing plate onto this part. So that goes into here for the back. And then the anvil attachments, there are two of them, go here and here, and these holes. And those are going to cover up the rivets, just like that, and press them in so that they can be flattened like the rest of them. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. This part here goes right into there. All right, had to figure this out by trial and error. So I'll loosen this up a little bit. Go ahead and mount the backing plate onto the back, like that. And then we're going to snug up the anvils onto the front rivet, or rivets. Make sure that they're lined up correctly, like that. And they should seat to the point where they just kind of sit on the top. And once they're snugged up, we're going to go ahead and tighten this down. So I got that lined up. Let's go ahead and get your socket put on here. Get it in the right direction. Alright, and now we're going to just start the press. Now that doesn't seem to want to stay lined up. Alright, so I got the master link pressed on here. As you can see, it's nice and cinched down. And now I got the fresh new gold DID chain, gold chain, bling bling. So Now I gotta go make a run down to the hardware store with my son, get some blue Loctite to put the front sprocket back on, get everything adjusted as far as the rear chain tension, and then take it back downstairs early AM and try to get a ride in. All right, well, appreciate the time. Thank you guys for watching. I hope it was helpful. Definitely had some hiccups, but I hope that the tips that I gave in the video are helpful for you guys if you run into the same problems. All right, good luck with the job. Take care.